afternoon to you, 4 o'clock time for Sports for CLE. Thanks for joining us. Hope you're having a good afternoon. Browns getting ready. Another game. Seems like every week we say they got to get a win. They do it. 1-3. They will travel to Washington, D.C. to play the Commanders. Former Browns defensive coordinator, interim head coach Greg Williams on what he's seen from the Browns so far this season. This is from the Come Get Some with Greg and Blake Williams podcast.
You know, the team looks fractured at times. It doesn't look like it's together. And I'm talking about from a physical, from a belief, from a toughness, effort and toughness standard. Okay, we have to play with more effort. We have to play with more toughness. Okay, we have to play smarter, tougher. Okay, for longer than the opponent, and I'm not seeing that, and that drives me nuts because I see the fractures on the sideline, and it has to be in the locker room too.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And so it's like goes back to like one more thing that you can't blame: injuries. Don't want to hear it. What did the Raiders have at injury wise?
Oh,
Max
my gosh.
Crosby, Devontae Adams,
They're top players.
All those type of players as well too. And they don't have. I want to hear depth. They don't have the depth.
How do you think Gardner Minshew is playing?
Now let's welcome in Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Jeff, you know, when you're losing, everything looks worse, and when you're winning, everything looks better. I mean, and they just don't look good right now. You can say, I can't argue with what Greg Williams is saying because they don't look great right now.
This team, and it's been multiple points this year, you know, and even the last 2 weeks, you looked good coming out of the gate, you know, against, you know, New York. You look good coming out of the gate against Las Vegas. Then all of a sudden you basically hit pause, and the second and third quarters go by, and the team has done absolutely nothing. They start to revive themselves a little bit in the fourth quarter. You know, certainly falls too short. Inexcusable losses to the New York Giants, inexcusable loss on the road to the Las Vegas Raiders. You know, these were the games, you know, where the Browns were supposed to eat and kind of like pick things up and tread water and maybe even be above 500 before some of the injured players, you know, started playing, before some of the injured players started to return. And, you know, look, luckily for them, you know, there's a lot of parity right now in the AFC overall, but it's just not been a very promising product right now. And it's hard to think, you know, that this team, you know, can actually find a way to remain competitive, because if you can't put together 4 quarters on the same day, you have a hard time believing that, you know, you're going to find a way to all of a sudden sustain things and start looking really, really good for 13 out of 14 straight weeks.
Yeah, again, I can't argue with you. All right, so through 4 weeks, what's the most concerning thing that you are seeing with the Browns? And for me, the offenses look bad. But the most concerning thing for me is something I know you talked about on your Locked On Browns podcast. The defense just isn't tackling it, and this defense, until this offense figured it out, you needed to lean on them, and they just haven't answered. They've been better than the offense, but that bar's pretty low right now.
Well, I mean, if you want to look at the offense, you're going to start with the offensive line. I mean, it's, you know, just absolute in shambles what's going on right there. And even where there's times where, you know, they're actually kind of getting, you know, decent pass protection, I think Deshaun has just gotten harassed and, you know, certainly pressured and hit so much, it's almost like he gets himself into a false narrative of whether or not there is pressure or there isn't. And look, it happens to a lot of quarterbacks. Defensively, the defensive line play last year was just absolutely ridiculous, you know, whether it was, you know, rushing the passer, whether it was stopping the run. And the thing you saw last year is, you know, and I remember week in, week out, man, this defense looks so fast. They look so fast. They don't look as fast this year. They look slower this year. The other thing that you saw last year, it was always helmets to the ball, you know, and it wasn't just one guy trying to make a tackle. It was 2, it was 3. One was going low, one was going high. And, you know, they're just off all around, you know, and, you know, there's not a unit on this team right now that, you know, you don't believe can play better. You know, the secondary, the linebackers, the defensive line, certainly the wide receivers, certainly the tight ends, the running backs, you know, the quarterback, the offensive line. There's not there's not one part of this team, you know, at times over the last couple of years or times during this, you know, regime of Barry and Stefanski, when this team has been successful, you know, you pointed out 3, 4, 5 units that he said, man, you need this unit to step up, and maybe you have every unit playing collectively well. Right now, you have every unit basically playing, average or below average. And look, it's the NFL. Teams are fired up, and I know the Raiders were missing a lot of talent on Sunday, but that meant other guys were getting the opportunity that they're normally not going to get. So it was a big time opportunity for them. It's a very, very watered down and flawed product right now. Certainly, you did not get the juice to the offensive side of the ball after you made all the coaching changes that you did last year when you did the same thing to the defense and made a lot of changes there, which turned into a really, really strong 2023 for the defense. Defense is slow out of the gate this year. I think they'll improve, but I also think part of the problem for the defense is they're ending up where they're playing a lot more than they did last year. Last year, they led the league in 3 and outs. They were just so quick and so active and so physical. Not really, anything that you're seeing when you put on anything from 2024 to at this point. You're not going to use any of those adjectives or superlatives.
Well, one thing that is going well is there are injured guys that figure to make an impact that are coming back, and this was a good sight today. Nick Chubb activated and off of the PUP list, so he's got 21 days to get activated to the active roster, going through drills, and again, it's the beginning of the process, but it is the beginning. So again, he has 21 days to be activated. Also, some other roster news. So in addition to Nick Chubb, we see that Nyheim Hines, Michael Dunn, also designated for return to practice. Signed to the active roster from the practice squad is Nathaniel Watson. Guess that is to try to help shore up the run defense that was not good against the Raiders. David Njoku is set to practice today after missing 3 games. Browns also now know that Michael Hall will be suspended first 5 games. That includes the games he's missed earlier this season, so he's got a couple more under the NFL's personal conduct policy. All good things. They need playmakers on the offensive side of the ball. Cooper has been not what Amari Cooper usually is. You haven't had Chubb and you haven't had Njoku. Those are your top 3 playmakers. So that explains a little bit. And having said that, they got to figure something out.
Yeah, absolutely do. I mean, I think they're kind of caught in, what is actually probably their identity right now. Jerome Ford, to his credit, the statistics don't look terrible, but, you keep in mind, the Jacksonville game, there was a big 4th down run that obviously aided his statistical output. He was better in the 4th quarter against the New York Giants, had a big run Sunday against the Las Vegas Raiders, which, kind of made his stats look a little better than they were. Offensively, we talk all about the younger receivers. And, a lot of it has been, in last week, certainly trying to get the ball consistently more and more to Amari Cooper. The wonder there for me is what was the point of investing in all these other guys? You certainly went out and made a trade for Jerry Jeudy. You signed him pretty much as quickly as you acquired him to a contract extension. You thought the process was going to be to try to divvy up targets. Amari with a huge drop on Sunday. Even when Amari does go well right for him, you get what you think is going to be an 80-something yard touchdown. You kind of get a phantom holding call that should have probably never been called. I think the part of it is the malaise where they basically go 2 quarters without getting much done, and then all of a sudden the confidence level shrinks. And it's not the way you can succeed in any professional sport. Your confidence has to be supreme high, sky high at all given times. So it was certainly something that they, are struggling with, and the question is going to be, these guys are returning to the practice field. The probability that any of them are going to play Sunday is probably out the window to this point. So the question is, when these guys actually go from, returning to practice to being able to play, is the whole going to be, a huge, great margin, kind of like it was in 2022, when Deshaun Watson finally got back and was able to play for this team?
Well, Kevin Stefanski was asked about some of the injured guys coming back, specifically David Njoku, Nyheim Hines, and the tackles, Jack Conklin, Jedrick Wills.
They're both working very hard getting closer. I know they're 2 tackles, but 2 different injuries. They're working at they're doing their damnedest to get back. So we'll see what they look like today, tomorrow, Friday, but that's just how you have to treat any injury, and these guys in particular, they're working hard to get back.
Kevin, with Nyheim, whenever he's able to get back, we know what he brings in the return game, but offensively, what kind of dimension does he add to that backfield?
Yeah, I think you see Naheem and the plays that he's made in his career, certainly not just on special teams, on offense as well. So he's a talented ball carrier, whether you hand it to him or throw it to him. So excited to get him back out there at practice as well. That's another one, Mary Kay. We got to see how this week goes, see how he looks throughout this week. But Dave obviously gives our offense a boost with his ability both in the run game and the pass game. But really got to see how he does these next few days.
And Jeff, he's talking about Njoku at the back half there, and I think he would help both the passing game and the running game and the red. I mean, if he can come back and is 90%, 80%, that helps you.
No doubt. And I think, maybe everybody kind of got excited last week when he went back to the one practice. But if you notice, everything that we saw of him returning to practice last week was basically at a 50%, 60% clip. And going back to what we did see, it was like, I haven't seen one cut yet or anything that's going to resemble, what would, translate into, running a pattern and trying to create separation, which was why it was only the one practice this week. Look, the higher ankle sprain is always the more difficult one to come back from. It's not just involving your foot, essentially. It's involving, your foot, your mid leg, your calf, even your knee. You don't want to put too much stress on it. They really could use David back. David, last year just made this incredible rise. He was always obviously a talented player, was always kind of a big part of the offense. But, once they, had Joe Flacco playing and they started to just go vertical more often, you just saw that it just opened up, what we all kind of knew about David for the years is that he's just such an athletically gifted tight end. He's such a difficult cover. But when you have all your routes being run within 10 to 12 yards of the line of scrimmage, it's kind of easy to cover anybody because you're basically playing Arena League football. So to get David back would be crucial. And look, he's out on the field Wednesday this week. Last week it was only Thursday. So you're going to try to get to Thursday and see where he is then. You start to need to get these guys back. The other tight ends have tried, but you're just not replacing what a David Njoku has been for this franchise. You're certainly not replacing what a David Njoku was in 2023 for this franchise. Starting to get some more of these talented players back certainly would be a huge, huge boost. And maybe that's something that can up the overall confidence of this offense when they take the field each and every week.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. I'll be right back. Stay with us.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby 10s. $10 each, 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns here on Sports4CLE. Let's head to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Yes, this is Daryl from Dixon. The progress of the offense is definitely going slower than what we want it to, but it does look like Deshaun Watson is starting to look like an NFL quarterback. He wasn't initially, but he does look like he's improving. Despite all the problems with an offensive line that can't run block or not jump off sides, it's about as well as expected. No Njoku, no Chubb, running backs ain't taking lanes. The defense has no excuse. Last year, Jim Schwartz got all the credit for building a great defense. Where's it at this year? We blame Stefanski for everything, but everything's got to pull together. It's going to take time. It may be a rough year for us, but, as a Browns fan, it's always next year, I guess.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, yeah, I thought Deshaun Watson has looked pretty good, and we showed yesterday it was, that his PFF grade was second highest behind only Lamar Jackson for this week. Having said that, I agree about the defense. The defense, they got to get it done. The pieces are there. The parts are there. They got to carry him for a little bit.
There's no question. I mean, we'll start with Deshaun. I mean, look, you can take the points and the touchdown pass to Amari Cooper off the board. Obviously, you can. But Deshaun Watson did everything you would hope for. Climbed up into the pocket, still took a hit, found his guy deep down the field. That's a great sign. You put that into the statistical equation, and all of a sudden, Deshaun Watson at that point alone is over to, 250 yards. The Amari Cooper drop, you keep in mind that ball was probably going to be a 21, 22-yard completion. All of a sudden, now you're knocking on 285, 290 as far as maybe his numbers for that week. He looks more confident. His throwing looks really, really good. And I think at times, that's the one thing it's kind of impressed me is, we all have this question of where his arm was going to be. I think the arm talent is there. You go back to the crazy running around in the pocket and then finally escaping against Jacksonville in the rain on a wet field, then basically just absolutely throwing a seed, to the sideline where only his guy could catch it. His guy did catch it, stayed in bounds. So there are promising signs for Deshaun. I still think he could have probably handled that last 4th and 3 a little bit better. That's another story for another day. But yeah, I mean, look, and the thing is, everybody, the problem is that the pressure is always going to go to the offense. It's just the way it is. But the defense, yes, it's fair to say that this defense is truly underperforming. We felt that this defense, which was, to go by whatever metric you went by last season, was a, number 1, number 2, number 3 overall defense in the entire NFL. They're nowhere near that now. They were not just, holding offenses down last year. They were suffocating offenses last year. They're not doing that this year. The tackling has been bad. It's been bad. Like I mentioned earlier, the defensive line played so well last year. A lot of times you had, running backs basically get the handoff, and there it was. There was the Browns party in the backfield. And it wasn't that he was getting positive yardage. He was doing everything he could. Anybody was doing anything they could just to avoid a big negative play. They're not getting those breaks this year. They're not playing certainly with the same swagger and confidence on the defensive side of the ball as they were last year. And it is fair to say, because it is a lot of the same guys. And you can't bring up Mike Hall because we hadn't seen Mike Hall take a regular season rep. We have no idea what he was going to bring. And although Maurice Hurst is out, Maurice Hurst is not supposed to be somebody that carries this defense on his own. It's, the offense, I don't think anybody realized it was going to be this slow getting started or this bad, but I think the regression on defense is something that's probably not getting the speak that it deserves. And that's because, you can't really point the finger at the defense when your offense can't muster 20 points a week.
All right, NFL's biggest disappointments after 4 weeks is from PFF. They say Amari Cooper, Cleveland Stars, experienced considerable decline in almost every metric. Receiving grade from 79.6 to 62.2. Yards per route run from 2.21 to 0.86. Passer rating when targeted from 88.3 to 66.8. Drops have been the backbone of his trouble, with 4 passes not hauled in, most in the NFL. I know you've talked about this on the Locked On Browns podcast. Do you think they could revisit potentially trading Amari Cooper?
Look, we're never going to know. You know what I'm saying? You're never going to know. But, once basically we knew, that Cleveland had spoken to San Francisco, and Cleveland went so far as to say, this is what we will give you, and even went so far as to offer a contract that apparently Brandon Ayuk's camp, agreed to. But there was the problem that Brandon Ayuk necessarily did not want to go to Cleveland. But where does a team go from there? Where does a player go from there? Amari, the confidence was probably already shaken. They don't want to commit to me any further after this year. Oh, wow. Now they're possibly thinking about replacing me and moving me. And then the fact that the Browns came in and said, oh, well, here's a little more guaranteed money for 2024. That really is not going to undo the first 2 things that happened. Once you kind of, get a little, disheartened and, a little, upset, that wasn't going to change things overall. My thinking on this is you're not playing very well right now. And we're working on trying to get Amari Cooper out of a funk and playing at a better level, which seems kind of weird because we're not willing to commit to Amari Cooper for the future. We put a big investment into Jerry Jeudy, and I don't think he's getting the targets he deserves. We're trying to see what kind of player Cedric Tillman could be, and he's not getting any targets. Elijah Moore, and understandably so, his father took to social media on Sunday. His son's in a contract year. He got 1 target. Jamari Thresh doesn't even dress. So how are we supposed to evaluate any of these other wide receivers, in equating, what will be the ultimate decision for Amari Cooper? And how can we're not, none of this is working out, because any of the decisions they're making, they're not really lining up together. I'm all for Amari Cooper playing better. That would be great for this team. There's no question about it. But, if you weren't going to resign him over the summer, then most likely you're not going to resign him for next season anyway. And now we have a bunch of younger guys who are not getting the work that they desperately need. So what are you going to do? Go out and go bring in 2 more wide receivers next year? Just the whole handling of the situation, it's just not working out very well, in my opinion. And I understand that maybe we're just trying to do anything we can to get another win on the board. But, look, Amari's play, there's no way around it. It's certainly been disappointing, even though I think he's looked significantly better against the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders. He's another one on that last play. I'm not exactly sure what route he was running, because I'm pretty positive in the route that Jordan Akins was running. I don't know if Amari got bumped and maybe that threw off what his route was supposed to be on that 4th and 3. But we've all seen the very best of Amari Cooper over the last 2 years. Nobody is fooled. We know we're not getting that type of play this year. Is it still in there? We're not sure. But you're also doing a disservice to a lot of other players on this roster by trying to force feed him more touches than maybe you can count on him to give you the appropriate production for.
All right, before we go to break, this is from Mary Kay Cabot tweeting that the Browns likely will inquire about the Raiders' Davante Adams, who has requested a trade. Also possibly Titans' DeAndre Hopkins. Again, I don't doubt that. I don't know that we need another wide receiver. It doesn't seem like we know how to use the ones we have.
Oh, that's, hey, look, if Jordan Jeffers was available, do you want to bring him over? Sure. Would you want to bring any of these guys over? Sure. But, you did have a wide receiver who had a contract to be traded to Cleveland that was significantly better than what he took to stay in San Francisco, and he chose not to come. So again, it's not going to be bringing in, even better, more proven wide receivers, because like you said, you really haven't shown that you can use them, and none of them play offensive line. So, whatever wide receiver you have, it's not going to improve your offensive line play, or it's not going to help any of these offensive linemen get healthier and back to the lineup any sooner. I mean, it's a nice conversation if you truly want to have it. But, I just don't see, what would be, the reason of that. And you finally got draft compensation and you can have a full draft in 2025. I'm not sure you want to go throw it all away. And even with Davante Adams, you would have to work on a further contract from there, because his guaranteed money ends in 2024 as well.
Jeff Lloyd and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. We'll head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason. Sports4CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Let's head back to the voicemail of Truth and Reason.
Hey, guys, I wanted to talk about the real problem with the Cleveland Browns. It seems to me it's more on Andrew Berry. He's the one that put this team together. He's the one that traded away all of our draft picks. I just want to remind everybody of our previous general manager, John Dorsey. He's the one who actually traded up to 10 to get Patrick Mahomes. He drafted Kareem Hunt. He came here, drafted Baker Mayfield, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb. Who has Andrew Berry drafted, other than J.O.K., maybe M.J. Emerson? All he's done is kick the can down the road and move contracts further down so we can pay them when they're not on the team. It's not Deshaun, it's Andrew. Thanks, guys. Go Browns.
As always, appreciate all of the voicemails. Jeff, in the interest of pointing some things out, he also hired Freddie Kitchens as a head coach and then refused to fire him, which is why he probably is no longer the GM. And he passed on Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson at number one. And again, okay. I just want to point out.
Well, if you want to do John, that's fine. Now I'll do Andrew. Andrew also chose a head coach that has taken this team chose a coach that took his team to the playoffs twice in 4 years. He also traded a 5th-round pick and got 2 years of 1,200-yard production from Amari Cooper. He also drafted Jerome Ford, who almost gave you 1,200 total yards last year. He also extended David Njoku, who went on later to have the best statistical production we have ever seen from him. So gave him top tight end money without seeing him be a top tight end. And then he did, in fact, turn into a top tight end. Now, and the other thing is, where has he necessarily drafted the last couple of years? He has not had a 1st-round pick. And, if you want to put the Deshaun Watson trade on Andrew Berry, you're foolish to do it. Nobody spends $235 million guaranteed of somebody else's money without them giving you an A-OK or telling you, if that's what you need to do to get me this player, I want this player, you give him the $235 million guaranteed. John Dorsey, and it was a nice run, but where did John Dorsey ever get this team? Did he even play in a playoff game? Any of those things? Look, you're way too far in the past. And you want to know what? If anybody brought up this conversation, 18 months ago, would Baker Mayfield be your starting point to, condemn Andrew Berry and prop up John Dorsey? Look, I am happy as heck for Baker. I truly am. And he certainly was, helped change, the way this franchise was viewed. But look, Andrew Berry has been extremely successful. If you want to base what he has done just on the draft, yeah, maybe he could be better, but he has traded well. He has, certainly free agent money, the guys that have come in here. And part of that is because the Browns are more successful now. So you weren't going to get free agents to even answer a phone call or a text from the Cleveland Browns about possibly coming here, on a free agent deal. It gets lost, I think, sometimes on those things. You want to manipulate, you want to speculate. And even the 3 players he brought up, that John Dorsey drafted, first things first, that draft class was absolutely freaking loaded. And, those players were drafted in the, top 35, 36. A draft class should be based on, what you're doing, day 2, day 3. And, up until this past draft, Andrew Berry draft classes for the Browns almost had every single player finish out their rookie contract with the Cleveland Browns.
Yeah, and you know what? If you want to criticize Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski, the one criticism I'll listen to and I think is fair, all right, you've made the playoffs. Now you got to do it consistently. The franchise went from laughingstock to competitive. Now you got to make the playoffs every year. And they're off to a horrible start this year.
There's no question about it. This team is 1-3. This team should, you should be 3-1. You're telling me you don't think you should have beaten the New York Giants? You're telling me you don't think you should have beaten the Las Vegas Raiders? Gardner Minshew, Daniel Jones, these are quarterbacks that you lost to. This team should be 3-1. And even the saddest part is any of these games, the Giants game, the Raiders game, all they needed to do was just wake up for their final offensive drive. That's all they needed to do. And you see this all the time in the NFL. There are some really good teams. Kansas City Chiefs Sunday, kind of sleepwalking through it for about 55 minutes. Then all of a sudden, it was go time. It was money time. Touchdown, 17-10. They win a game on the road. They probably shouldn't have won. And, the Browns right now just can't consistently do that. So they can't play for, a full 4 quarters, or even games where they kind of sleepwalk through the first 3.5. They can't wake up and go basically grab the bag, seize the opportunity when they need to. It's frustrating. There's no doubt about it. 4th and 3 inside the 10, and everybody, well, if Hopkins hadn't missed the extra point. No, in that situation, even if you were down 3, you're on the road, you go for the kill shot. You go get the win. You don't play for overtime. But, when things aren't going well, we can find everything. Next we'll find out, that basically what they're serving for lunch at the facility, or, the media spread at the games, it's undercooked. That, when things aren't going well, everybody will point a finger at everything, and even notice things were going well. Everybody loved those white uniforms, but nobody talked about them on Sunday.
The one criticism I would have of Deshaun Watson, and you and I I've defended him, and I think he can still do things a little better. Last 2 games, he has had the ball in his hand, kind of like you're talking about, with the ability to win the game. Win the damn game. He didn't do it. That's the most disappointing thing to me with Watson so far.
And, I mean, I grew some criticism, and I'm not one to, bring up film or put it out on social media, but I did, the final play. And you could see the way the safety was lined up, that there was going to be coverage of 3 Raiders on 2 Browns on the left-hand side, which tells me the middle of the field is wide open all day long. Jerry Jeudy, was going to be wide open. I understand there was pressure, there was a stun, it wasn't blocked well. He had 1.85 seconds from the time he got that ball to when he could have released it to Jerry Jeudy. What I'm going to say is other quarterbacks in the NFL would have made that touchdown throw. And I am one of the stoush play of Deshaun Watson. I defend his play, and I have defended his play, and I even defended his play on Sunday, saying this is one of the best games he's had as a Cleveland Brown. But that still doesn't mean, or that I don't think he could have manipulated that play into probably a touchdown in that position. And then I got people, oh, well, he didn't even cut yet. His head wasn't turned around. And I mean, it's like, man, that's like high school stuff, bro. A quarterback, he better throw the ball before his wide receiver has made his break, or guess what? It is going to be an interception. But again, when things are not going well, we can shred it and pick it apart and even pick the bones apart after we've gotten through the meat and the guts of it.
Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast, and I'm going to step aside, take one more time out. We'll take a little bit deeper look into this matchup with the Commanders. Sports4CLE, be right back. Stay with us. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program is dedicated to recognizing exceptional students, teachers, and schools throughout Ohio. Scan the QR code on screen to nominate students and teachers as Academic All-Stars and Teachers of the Month. They must be currently enrolled or teach in grades K through 12. Is your K through 12 school developing students' literacy skills to achieve success in reading? If so, you can nominate your school for the School of the Year. Students can win $100, teachers can win $500, and schools can win $2,500. Scan the QR code, fill out the forms, and nominate deserving students, teachers, and schools today. The Ohio Lottery Partners in Education program takes pride in honoring exceptional students, teachers, and schools across Ohio. Submit your nomination today. It's fun, fast, and free. We continue talking Browns with Jeff Lloyd from the Locked On Browns podcast. Take a look at this. Zach Jackson, Browns beat report, tweets this out. Commanders defense last in these categories through 4 weeks. EPA per play, minus 0.22. EPA per drive, minus 1.57. EPA per pass, minus 0.38. Third down percentage, 54.8. You flip it over, the Browns are converting third downs at only a 20.8%. So basically, this is the chance for that offense to start rolling a little bit and getting some things right. Commanders have struggled defensively. Watson asked about Browns' problems on third downs.
I mean, the third downs percentages starts with the first and second down. We got to put ourselves in manageable for third downs before we can, speak on it. So the more, the distance increase in third down, the lower the percentage you get for anybody to capitalize on. So I think the biggest thing is just being more locked in on first and second down so we can get ourselves in position to create opportunities for us to create, be positive on those third downs.
So, Jeff, when you look at this, what are some of the matchups? What can the Browns do against the Commander? They need to win. 2-3 sounds a lot better than 1-4, and 3-3 sounds bearable when you're 1-3.
Well, look, when this schedule first originally broke, I was like, I think this is where you want the Commanders. I think they've gotten better faster than I think, anybody anticipated. I think everybody kind of felt that maybe Washington was going to turn it around. Guys love to play for Quinn. He is great to his players. He lets his players and he works with them and trying to put them in the best situations. Not only they feel that they are to win, the best situations that they are comfortable to win. Daniels has been absolutely fantastic. As far as the Commanders' defense, these are conversations we've had over the last 2 weeks. The Las Vegas Raiders can't stop the run. Well, they did. The New York Giants can't stop the run. The New York Giants can't run the ball. The Las Vegas Raiders can't run the ball. All of those things did happen over the last 2 weeks. Again, I thought it was going to be better for this team to maybe play on the road just to get away from it. It's, a little easier, a little less stress to play on the road. You don't have to worry about trying to satisfy your 70,000 fans in the stadium. But yeah, this is going to be a very, very difficult assignment. I think Washington is growing very quickly. But again, if this team is supposed to be what we all thought they were going to be, there is no opponent that is too big. There is no opponent that is too good. It doesn't matter whether you're playing them at home or on the road. If you were supposed to be a team that was supposed to contend for a division title, you should be able to win each and every Sunday. The confidence meter is certainly going lower and lower with everybody into that regard. And look, if it doesn't happen Sunday, it is going to be, this isn't even full-blown panic mode yet, but it will be utter catastrophe panic mode if they cannot find a way to pull this game out on Sunday in Washington, because then it's the Eagles, then it's division play, then it's teams like the Kansas City Chiefs on the schedule. And, it's really, really hard to think that all of a sudden you're going to start getting right then.
How concerned are you with the running game? I mean, the Commanders struggle to stop the run.
See, I'm concerned, but the problem is there's a lot of understanding as to why it's not working. Certainly, you don't have your top running back who's been a fixture of, this team and this offense for a long time. Your offensive line, it'll be another week. Well, we probably will not know until Friday who actually is going to start and play on the offensive line. Every time you turn it on, there's one of the offensive linemen leaving the field. Maybe they come back, then they leave the field again. Nick Harris has already played exponentially more than I think we ever thought the backup center was going to play. Joe Bitonio's played left guard and left tackle. Ethan Posey has played center and left guard. DeJuan Jones, I'm wondering where DeJuan Jones is, maybe shape-wise, because, just because he was back to the field faster than Jedrick Wills and, certainly Jack Conklin, does that mean we've got the 100% DeJuan Jones that we had last year? Because it most certainly doesn't look like it. You're seeing more mistakes, I think, from DeJuan Jones than we saw last year, as opposed to, oh, well, he went after the wrong guy. There was a time on Sunday where he didn't go after either guy. So, I'm okay with a young guy maybe making a mistake here and there, but let's make it an aggressive mistake. But, this team just needs to get better, and they just need to play, more in harmony. But the running game, I think a lot of it certainly is the factor that I think defenses don't have a lot of faith in the Browns passing game. They haven't thrown for 200 yards yet. They're not wrong for that. And the fact that, you don't really have any, routine, orchestrated, normal starting offensive line that is also working with a new offensive line coach within a new offensive system. So, yeah, I'm concerned about it, but it's not so much on the players that are currently running the ball. It's the situation as a whole and all the factors that go into it.
Yeah, they got to get it right Sunday without question. Jeff Lloyd, Locked On Browns podcast, as always. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Jeff.
All the best, Dave. Let's go Browns.
Sounds like it. Hopefully we can talk about a win next week. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. Other side of the break, we will get the Washington perspective of what's going right for the Commanders. John Keim, ESPN Commanders reporter from ESPN, joins us. Sports4CLE. Be right back.
You know what I think? I don't think you have the stones.
Oh, I've got the stones. I think you're the one that don't have the stones.
Let's settle this once and for all.
Amble up to the 4 new Ohio Lottery scratch-offs with all kinds of stones. Gemstones, diamond, emerald, sapphire, and ruby tins. $10 each, 10 times multipliers. 2 fast spots for quick draw wins of up to $100 and a $500,000 grand prize. Which one will you get when you order them up? Well, that's just the luck of the draw.
We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. We're going to flip things around and get the Washington perspective on things. Browns travel to Washington, D.C. To face a Commanders team that's 3-1 on the year. Let's welcome in John Keim, ESPN Commanders reporter, also from Lakewood. So, John, appreciate the time. Thing that jumps out, Dan Quinn off to a new head coach there, off to a 3-1 start. What has been different?
Well, I know you're going to get to him in a minute, but Jaden Daniels has been different. However, putting him aside, even before Jaden Daniels got here, it was different with Quinn. The atmosphere in the building is dramatically improved. There's more energy in the building. And I think that starts from Quinn, but also the guys that he hired on the staff. So that, to me, has been the biggest difference. I think there's a different level of accountability, I feel. And some of that isn't so much like just massive discipline, but I think maybe giving the players more ownership in what they're doing. I think that's paid off too. A lot of veteran leaders they brought in, but really it starts with Quinn and his energy.
You mentioned Jaden Daniels, quarterback, number 2 overall pick in the draft. What have you seen from? I mean, he looks really good. I've seen him a couple of times. What have you seen from him day in and day out that you think the Commanders really like about him?
Well, I think what you're seeing it translate on the field, right? And so, but I'm going to say since the time that Daniels arrived in Washington after the draft, going to the spring practices and training camp workouts, what you've seen or what you've heard too is about the work he's put in, showing up at 5:45 a.m. during the spring workouts throughout the spring to get extra film sessions in, doing his own little personal walkthroughs before practice, going over all this stuff. Like those are the things you continue to hear about him, is about the preparation that he puts into it, and then how quickly, because of that, he has picked up the offense and how they can expand things with him because of that. And then you see during training camp practice, what you're seeing now is a lot of what we saw then. There were days where he wasn't as good, but there was never a day where you thought, oh, he might not be ready. He might need to sit a while. He might not be good. Throughout the spring and summer, you just kind of had one thought: he's going to be good. I just don't know when.
A lot of folks were split as to, is it Caleb Williams or is it Jaden Daniels? And both of them are playing well. When you look at Daniels' skill set on the field, in the event Browns fans haven't seen it, what is he doing well, just football-wise?
You're right. So there's a couple of things. I will say this. Here, they were always going to take Jaden. I think even if Caleb Williams and Jaden Daniels were there at number 2, I think they would have taken Jaden Daniels. So just because that's how much they liked him. So on the field, what you see is really high level of accuracy. Now his completion percentage is 82%. He set a record, an NFL record, by completing 85% or more of his passes in 2 consecutive games. Some of that stems from short passes at or near the line of scrimmage. That's a definite part of their offense. I think they're very good with easing him into things. He will go down the field, and I think it's going to happen a little bit more as we go on here. But you see the high level of accuracy, and it's not just the completion percentage, it's where he's putting the ball. For example, there was a play the other day against Arizona. It's a 3rd and 4. They're inside their own 15-yard line, and he just puts it on the proper shoulder for the receiver to turn upfield to get the first down. If he doesn't put it on there, the defender's right there. It's stopped. So it's instead of 1st and 10, it's 4th and 1. They're punting, but they continue the drive. They go down and score a touchdown. It's little things like that for him, the accuracy that you really see. Then he has, I would say, really good arm talent. So you'll see another play in the game against Arizona, a couple plays, including a touchdown pass to Terry McLaurin, where you might scan the field, and as soon as he sees it, that ball's coming out. And it's just, there's not hesitation. When he sees it, he trusts it, he throws it. He will scramble, and not what the big thing that they're trying to do with him is scramble to keep plays alive, not just scramble to run. And he's been doing a better job of keeping his eyes upfield, not making huge plays on the run at this point. His longest run this year, I think, is 17 yards. But they're doing a better job getting him to keep his eyes upfield, to look for those plays downfield. Sometimes they're available and he's not throwing it, but he's still picking up positive yards and keeping the chains going. But that's what he offers. It's hard to get him down. The Giants did. The Giants sacked him, I think it was 4 or 5 times. So you can do it, but he has proven to be rather elusive. But it's not. He's considered more of a passer who can run, and not a guy who's out there just running around.
You mentioned Terry McLaurin. Ohio State fans will remember that name. It really seems like that chemistry is developing. They didn't do well right out of the gate, but that Monday night game kind of hit his stride, and looks like they've kind of developed the chemistry that you would want.
They have. Now, I will say the first 2 games, it didn't concern me about their on-field relationship as far as like what would happen, because you saw it in the summertime. So during practices, you saw that chemistry there. I think it was the first game they missed on a couple connections. One would have been a 70-yard touchdown pass that McLaurin was open for. Another one was, I think it was as Daniels gets more advanced, he would have thrown a different pass, but it was the right decision to throw to McLaurin, but he threw a fade instead of a back shoulder pass, little things like that. So the connection was there. And then the Giants did a good job in week 2 of taking McLaurin away with playing a lot of coverage over the top down the field. The Bengals did not, and they paid for it. And you will see McLaurin get the opportunities, but they have good chemistry. Those two text and talk all the time about what they're seeing, so they get on that quote unquote same page. But they're constantly texting and meeting. And Daniels is starting to now lead film sessions with the receivers. They're constantly talking in there about what do you see, how are you processing what you see, so they know what one another is seeing.
Running game. Brian Robinson is probably the lead guy. I know Eckler's been out. How good has the running game, and what do the Commanders need from that running game?
Consistency and just not putting them in a bad spot. So Robinson's been pretty good. He will run angry, as they say, and he's a power runner. They've done a better job. Like when Eckler's in there, and they have another guy, Jeremy McNichols, who went and gained 68 yards against the Cardinals. And part of it is the way and Robinson had over 100 against the Cardinals. So they've done a good job in that area for the most part. A lot of it, though, it's not just line up and just slam it down your throat. It's with a lot of maybe some disguises or some motion, a lot of, pulling action, pulling one way, hitting them back another. So you have to maintain some level of discipline in order to make sure that you handle that. So and you can spread it. And then also you have the element of Jaden Daniels being able to run. They will run him. They will run him on a couple design runs every game. And that at least holds the backside of the defense at times. So sometimes you may have 2 or 3 guys occupied with Daniels and someone else is hitting it up the middle because you can't get guys over there to cover. So there are elements of that work very well in their run game. And, Robinson, I think, is a good power runner.
We mentioned Dan Quinn, new head coach. He's a defensive-minded guy. Who has stood out? Defense has been good, obviously, 3-1. Who has stood out, and what has stood out about this Commanders defense?
Well, I have to correct you. Their defense actually the first 3 games were not very good. And so they have struggled, and they don't have a Myles Garrett, and not many people do, but they don't have a really good pass rusher to just consistently apply pressure, right? So, but in the last game against Arizona, what they're starting to do better is coverage-wise. At least they did against Arizona. And they handled Kyler Murray, were able to contain him mostly in the pocket, getting him maybe a better pass rush. They have those 2 tackles, Deron Payne and John Allen. They've been inconsistent. The run defense has been really bad. So if you're the Browns, that's an area you absolutely have to take advantage of, because if you can't run it on them, you're not going to, it's going to be really difficult. And that is something that they've given up a lot of yards. You'll see the gaps have been wide. So they do have 2 pretty good linebackers. Bobby Wagner's here. Frankie Louvu was a free agent they signed from Carolina. He can be very active and disruptive. He has not been as disruptive as a pass rusher in terms of getting sacks as I thought he might be, but I do think that'll come because they do like to blitz him a lot. So their defense, the secondary has been up and down. The corners had a better game last week. It was probably their best game of the season. The safeties are pretty good, but they don't have a lot of playmakers on that defense. They don't have a young Jaden Daniels type guy on the defense. So I think it's one that they have to play very sound to make it work, or do things to create turnovers, because they're just not, I don't think they're talented to line up and just stop you time and time again. But it's a new system. They do have half the defense or so is new. So it does take time, but they have to, they're coming off their best game. The run defense has to get a lot better.
When you look at this game, what are some of the keys? What does it look like when the Commanders are winning games like they have?
So it all starts with the offense. They are very efficient. So they avoid 3rd and long situations very well. And the last 2 games, for example, they've had 5 plays combined where they lost yards on offense. So that's a big strength of theirs. So then consequently on 3rd down, they're really good. So, and it puts Jaden Daniels in a very good spot. So if you can stop him on 1st down or second down consistently, then you have a better chance to slow them on offense. That's what they do well. And again, Daniel's accuracy and keeping and being able to pick up yards when things break down is a big bonus for them. So that, if you can take McLaurin away, you can start to slow them. Against the Giants, for example, they did take McLaurin away. They gained 425 yards of offense, but only 21 points because the red zone offense wasn't very good. So the Browns would have to play good situational ball in the red zone. That's one. But again, like get them in, you're going to have to get them in more third and longs than teams have been able to do.
John Keim, Commanders reporter for ESPN. Appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much for spending some time with us, John.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
John Keim, he is the Commanders beat reporter for ESPN, telling us a lot about what's going on and some good things with the Commanders off to that 3-1 start. They will face the Browns Sunday in Washington, D.C. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. We continue talking Browns on Sports4CLE. Stay with us.
Come back to go forward. Back to learning new things. Back to pursuing your dreams. Tri-C has flexible learning options to fit your life. And every year, more than 1,000 local companies provide Tri-C students with real-world learning. The right education can boost your lifetime earning power by hundreds of thousands of dollars. Start now with a college education you can afford. Tri-C, where futures begin.
We turn our attention to the Cavs here on Sports4CLE. They are out in Florida IMG Academy for training camp next few days. New head coach Kenny Atkinson today asked, does he have his rotation figured out?
No, no way. Yeah, we haven't played enough, or I'm gonna get to know the group better, and it'll play out. But even that, I told you one thing we have to celebrate, and part of our identity is our depth. And if you have 14 rotation players, you can only play 10, max 11. 10's usually probably a better number, but it's going to be those will be difficult decisions. I know that's where it becomes really hard for the coach, because probably 3 or 4 guys that deserve to be in the rotation. You just can't do it.
With that, let's welcome in Ethan Sands. He is Cavs beat reporter for cleveland.com and the Plain Dealer. Ethan, any idea what this Kenny Atkinson offense might look like coming up?
I mean, it's going to be really, really moving, right? This is a group that is starting to grow together. They're starting to learn what each other like to do. They brought 13 players back from the roster last season, so they know where these guys are going to be. They understand how they're going to move together, but it also feels like there's going to be more offense set up for Evan Mobley, a guy that's going to be able to handle the rock, be able to create offense for his teammates, but also be able to have players set screens for him and then be able to create offense for himself as well.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. So one of the things the Cavs obviously wanted Atkinson for is offensive mind. Mobley was asked about the new offense and where he's comfortable with the ball out on the floor.
I like the offense so far. The little sets we put in, we haven't put in everything, obviously. Still early. We have a lot to put in. But so far, it's very open, very fluid. In transition, we have our looks, and half court, we have our looks. And I'm liking it so far. In the NBA, just gradually getting used to it, getting used to the NBA spacing. 3-point line is a little further and stuff like that. So I've been working on 3-point shots. So I feel like anywhere on the floor, inside, outside, I'm pretty comfortable at now.
Ethan, we heard, Kenny Atkinson at his introductory press conference, and he couldn't stop talking about Mobley and his plans for him.
Yeah, I mean, Mobley is going to be a big part of this offense, right? This is going to be one of the key years for him to not only showcase what he's capable of, but also what his ceiling is on the offensive end. Getting out in transition, grabbing rebounds, being able to move with the ball and create offense, like I mentioned earlier. It's also a year where we feel like Evan Mobley has worked a lot this offseason, not only on his 3-point shot, but being able to create on the ball, on the dribble, and get to different spots. I asked him a little bit earlier today in his press conference about how he's been able to work on his moves, and something that he's been comfortable with is going to a signature move that we're going to get to see later into the season.
Yeah, the one of the big things was they didn't give him the ball a lot. You know, under the previous regime, he was kind of like an afterthought offensively.
It was very interesting to see how he was used when J.D. Bickerstaff was the coach. Now, Kenny Atkinson's talking about the usage rate for Evan Mobley being up, his ability to handle the rock himself, something that is going to be harped on again and again because this team wants to get on in transition. This team wants to be able to move quicker, but they kind of did that last year, but the thing that's going to be different this year is that they're going to immediately get into action. They're not going to get across half court and look around and try and see what the play is that's going to be designed. They're going to have things to get into based on where the trailers are, where the defense is, and where the rest of the team is scattered so that they can get open shots early into the shot clock, but also create offense for everybody on the floor, not only for one or two players that we saw last year.
It's kind of interesting. So they bring back pretty much everybody. You know, they talk about the core four. They kept them together. There was thought, oh, are they going to move this guy? Are they going to move that? Everybody's back. How do they improve? How do they move among the elite who have made, you know, New York's made some moves. Celtics won a championship. Philly's made some moves. What do they need to do to move among the elite in the East?
They got to remember who they are, right? This is a team that was based on his defensive identity last season. And Kenny Atkinson, in his first day of head coach and training camp, day one, was like, we're going to reiterate that. Do not lose that aspect of our game. We are a defensive-minded team, but there are things that we can do to improve ourselves on the offensive end to make ourselves better. The cohesion of this group, getting them to do two ends of the ball. Last year, they were focused solely on defense and then give Donovan Mitchell the ball and figure everything else along the way. Now it's more so, okay, everybody get involved. Everybody pick your spots, pick your matchups, and we'll figure out schemes to set up for this team to be able to be successful. That's what's the difference in today's day and age, right? We saw the Boston Celtics brought back a lot of players on their end. They brought back 3-and-D guys. They brought back players that are able to move with the basketball. Now, the Cavs have guys that can do that as well, but they also pose a threat to them because they still have the two big lineup. Then that makes the Celtics have to bring in different players that might not be as good for their lineup to face up with guys like Jared Allen, Evan Mobley in the post, while they can still spread the floor. That's the most important thing going into this season, is being able to spread Evan Mobley out a little bit more, give him opportunities with the ball in his hand, but still don't take away what he's good at, which is getting to the rim, creating with Jared Allen, and doing some two big-on-big actions, right? This is a team that has shown that it can play at high levels, and it is rated to be one of the top 2, top 3 teams in the regular season for the Eastern Conference. This is a team that needs to be able to see multiple different teams early on to compete and see where they fare when it comes to the NBA and the entire Eastern Conference.
Yeah, if you think about it, Mobley and Allen both move pretty well. They move their feet. They're quick for big guys. Those guys in open floor, they would be problematic for teams.
The transition is something that we mentioned earlier that is going to continue to be a big feature, right? Because like you mentioned, if they can get out in transition and beat other bigs up the floor, or even just get open shots for guys because they're running down the floor. We saw it a lot last year. Jared Allen was one of the best big men when it came to running the floor with Donovan Mitchell, Darius Garland, and it created open opportunities for him at the rim. This year, now when you have guys spread out and going to the corners and being able to looking for their shots, it's going to be a little bit different to see how the transition game is operated and who is going to be bringing the ball up the court. It could be Evan Mobley, could be Donovan, could be Darius. This isn't a team that says, okay, you're the point guard, Darius Garland, you have to bring the ball up every time down the floor. It's whoever has the best opportunity, we want to get up the floor as quickly as possible, and they trust multiple guys with the ball in their hands, and it's not like they have to deviate from those players just because they want to set something up, ideally with one player and one player only.
Certainly going to be interesting to watch, especially early in the season, to see how this all develops. Before I let you go, I know you tweeted this out. Diamond Sports Group, that's the bankrupt company of Bally Sports, announced in court Wednesday it will stop broadcasting games in 2025 for 11 of the 12 MLB teams it currently televises and holds the rights to, including the Guardians. So it's kind of interesting, and it will be developing. As of now, there's nowhere for those games to go. It'll be interesting to see. I think the Cavs are up after this regular season as well. So again, a developing story with the rights and where people can watch these games.
It's been going on for a while now, right? For the last year, they've been trying to have conversations about this topic, trying to figure out where they're going to go. At first, Diamond Sports Group had a deal with Amazon that was going to have them with $115 million in post-bankruptcy financing in exchange for 15% of the company in late August. Amazon backed out of that contract. It's a conversation that is still going on. Now it's looking like Amazon could come back in a different capacity, or these games that are being potentially moved away from the Bally Sports Network could be moved to MLB, which holds long-term plans to house linear and direct-to-consumer rights under a national umbrella. So it's really interesting to see how these different companies are built in, because we've seen some teams in the past already kind of get out of their agreements with Diamond Sports Groups, which is like that, and MLB took over some of those already, talking about the San Diego Padres and the Arizona Diamondbacks. But it's really interesting to see how these things have come to fruition, but how many questions there still are on this topic, because it's been going on for years now. And this kind of came as a surprise to MLB because it happened in court on Wednesday, and it was something that caught them off guard. But now it's something that they have to have conversations about, even more so internally, to see which way they want to go when it comes to the rights of these games.
Ethan Sands, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much, Ethan.
Thank you for having me.
Ethan Sands, make sure you check him out. He is the Cavs beat reporter for cleveland.com, as well as the Plain Dealer. It's going to do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 4 o'clock. Have a great night, everybody. See you tomorrow at 4 on Sports4CLE.